Health from the University of South Carolina, where he also completed a family practice residency. Dr. McBride is an emeritus professor in the UW SMPH Department of Medicine section of Cardiovascular Medicine and the Department of Family Medicine. Dr. McBride directed the UW Hospital and Clinic's preventative cardiology program and other clinical initiatives for people at risk with cardiovascular disease. He served as the UW SMPH Associate Dean for Students and the Associate Dean for Faculty. So last week at our board meeting, Rob Goose had said something of sometimes we have speakers come in and you go home and you talk about it at dinner, and it's impactful. Well, last April, Dr. McBride had come and spoken about his luckiest boy in the world adventures. Thank you for holding that up, Jenny. And I think that was a conversation at my dinner table we had for multiple nights of just the fortunate events that have happened in his life. So invited him back. I have ARVC, which is a heart cardio disease. And I work with Dr. January, who Dr. McBride had worked with for many years. So very relatable information, and honored to have Dr. McBride.
Thank you. Well, it's so nice to be back, especially on opening day and seeing some people that I know well. You know, that Steve Wuzlaki guy, I don't know, I said I'm not talking to him. I don't know if you saw his Facebook post about putting in a new floor in his house. He's putting all of us to shame. I made sure my wife didn't see it because otherwise I would be in majorly trouble. But I'm glad Joe made it back to play a little golf, my friend. And so it's so nice to see everybody and welcome to the new members. I'm going to talk about heart disease and heart disease prevention. I want to make sure that I answer your questions. You know, Jenny, you set this up beautifully because I'm sorry to hear about the complications that your ex and current.
Yeah, that's a long story.
Yeah, that sounded really interesting. Maybe I should turn it over to you. Wow, I don't know. Okay, moving right along. Yeah, that was a story from the heart. But anyway, my job to be serious about this was to make sure that people never had to go and have those kind of procedures. So I would always look at the angioplasty guys and say, I'm trying to put you out of business. So I did heart disease prevention, and the way I got started in that was I was doing my work in my residency, and I went to get a master's in public health. And the reason I did that was I wanted to learn how to educate people. I wanted to have a career in both medicine and education. And my faculty in my training program said, you need to go get some training in that. And I said, absolutely. And I had so many professors that didn't know how to teach that I thought I really ought to get some training in education. And while I was there, I ended up working with some of the best professors in exercise science and health science in the world. And this was at the University of South Carolina, actually. It was really interesting. And they were just in the tournament. You know, I expected them to beat Iowa. My daughter went to Iowa, so we had some good bets on that. And I should have talked to Ginny because she obviously knows who's going in the tournament, and you know, all that stuff. Next time I'm picking brackets with you. I didn't do so well in my bracket. But anyway, I ended up doing research with these professors, and it became really clear to me, and this is really important that you hear this, the number one cause of death and disability in the world is heart disease, cardiovascular disease, still is. It's dropping a lot. So since I got involved and I started my career in 1980, since I started, heart disease has dropped by more than half, and stroke has dropped by more than 70%. And that's based on not doctors doing their thing, really. It's based on changes in behavior of people. So heart disease is really a treatable issue. Now, physicians have made a lot of medical science, has made a lot of developments, I can tell you. And a lot of people, boy, the internet really screwed us up. I can tell you that. Wow, we were doing really well till the internet came along, because people get a lot of misinformation from the internet. So beware the internet. And I can talk about that because I was at a dinner thing the other night and somebody said, oh, statins. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so I'll talk about that if you have questions. I've done a lot of research with statins. I did one of the first studies in the country with statins, and we showed that you could decrease the plaques, the blockages by over 50% with the first statin that came along. And it was pretty remarkable study. And I've done about 25 other studies with those medicines. They're remarkable. They're actually natural compounds. They're from yeast. And people don't know that. And they're extraordinarily safe. And they're probably the most important medicine that came along in cardiology in the last 35 years, probably in the last 100 years. But anyway, the most important change that people can make are behaviors. And so what I learned in the early 1980s was that heart disease, the most important kind, heart attacks, strokes, the big things, even valvular disease, are preventable by the changes in our behavior. So, I came into this seeing mostly patients that were post-World War II patients, people from my parents' generation. And, the soldiers were given cigarettes in their rations, and I just finished a terrific book. And it was about a lot of soldiers. And one of the soldiers that it's featured was a famous Wisconsin athlete named Dave Schreiner. I don't know if any of you have heard of Dave Schreiner, but if you haven't, you ought to read about him. The book was written by the same author as wrote Friday Night Lights. If you haven't seen the show Friday Night Lights, it's the best series that I ever saw. I mean, it's really an amazing show. He wrote the book, and the book's called The Mosquito Bowl, and it's about these guys that went to the Pacific, and one of them was Dave Schreiner, and Dave Schreiner's name is up on Camp Randall. So when you look on Camp Randall, they have the most famous football players in Badger history, Ron Dane, and all these guys. Dave Schreiner's up there, and Dave Schreiner's a guy from Lancaster. And his best friend, Bob Hoskins, went off and they fought in the Pacific. And Dave Schreiner won the Medal of Honor, fought in the Battle of Okinawa. And these guys, when they were in the Pacific and when they were in the Battle of the Bulge, like today's baseball, my favorite baseball player when I was growing up were Hank Aaron and Warren Spahn. Warren Spahn fought in the Battle of the Bulge, which was the worst conditions possible. They were freezing, they were in these foxholes, and they couldn't wait to have a cigarette. Because nicotine gives you energy and warms you up. And so the thing, they throw away the candy bars and they go for these cigarettes. They trade food for cigarettes, because nicotine is so addictive. So right now, so coming out of World War II, more than 55% of adults smoke cigarettes. And right now that's down to 12%. It's a really remarkable story. And when I entered practice, it was about 40% of adults were smoking. And I started a tobacco cessation program when I got to UW-Madison. And fortunately, a guy named Mike Fiore came along and took it over. Now, Wisconsin has the largest tobacco cessation and research program in the world. $100 of millions of grants to help people stop smoking. It's been really successful. And the only people left that still smoke cigarettes are a very small percentage of people, and most of them have either mental health disorders, alcoholism, the very poor, people with less than high school education, things like that, people that just still struggle with some really difficult things. But we have another epidemic that's coming. And if you have kids and grandkids, especially if they're in college, the epidemic is vaping. And we still don't know a lot about vaping. We don't know all the products in vape smoke, but we know that it's really high in nicotine. So one vape pod, which costs about $50, has got the same, so those little slender vape pods have the same amount of nicotine in them as a pack of cigarettes. And high school kids and college kids, I teach a course on campus still on public health. And I asked them, and they don't know that there's that much nicotine in it. They don't know. They do it just to help stay awake before exams. And, when they have to get up early to go to class, they take a couple of hits and you see these giant clouds of smoke come out. So we got this new epidemic of nicotine addiction, and nicotine has its own effects on the blood vessel walls, the artery walls, and all that. We don't know what's coming. So it's a whole new wave of problems, so the tobacco companies, when they saw that we were being really effective of getting rid of all this tobacco, they said, okay, well, how can we addict young people? Because with cigarettes, what they did before was they got all these ads and they got cigarettes in the hands of teenagers. 80% of people were addicted before the age of 16. And now they're getting 80% of people addicted before the age of 18. It's mostly high school kids and college freshmen. Then the other big, risk factors for cardiovascular disease were blood pressure, cholesterol. Both of those are highly affected by our nutrition. It's okay today because it's opening day. On certain days of the year, there's holidays, like it's okay. Dan's over there chomping down his potato chips, and it's forgivable, Dan. It's all right. It's opening day, man. When I go to the stadium, I'm having a hot dog or a broth. I don't care. It's a sacred day for me, opening day. I'll never forget opening day 1970 with the Brewers. I stepped onto the field and I got to play catch with Ernie Banks. It was a pretty special moment. It's in the introduction, Jenny. When Ernie Banks said, "Do you want to have a catch?" I could barely lift up my right arm. I'm shaking so bad, So, it's a special day. But it's not what we do in one meal. It's what we do over the course of a day, over the course of a week, and it's what else we do. And it's the next big factor and the biggest issue going on in the United States and the world, the developing world right now, is weight gain. Because weight gain leads to high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes. So we have this epidemic of overweight and obesity, and it's become a really, really big issue for us, especially weight in the middle. So we're all prone to weight in the middle. That's just a natural genetic phenomenon. So another factor that really comes into play is genetics. So we're all genetically predisposed to something, right? Because we were all going to die of something. We got to die. So what would happen for me is I go into a room and I'd say, your dad had this or your mom had that, and I'd like to help you prevent that. And people, if they didn't want to change their behaviors, they'd say to me, well, you got to die of something, Well, sure you do, but you don't have to have a stent, and screw up your life at a certain age, I don't want somebody shoving a tube up my groin at, 55 or 60 or 70. When I'd see those guys that walk by the hallway like this, you're not coming back. I don't want 4 people standing on my groin and, in the middle of the day. That's the last thing I want. I got up today and I ran 3 miles. That's what I do. I'm 70 years old, and I got plans to run a marathon this year. That's my goal, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep moving, They asked Groucho Marx how he lasted to be 100, and he said, keep moving. And that's the next big factor is movement. And you don't have to run. I'm just doing that because I'm a nut. I ran a marathon at 60, and so I ran one at 30, 40, 50, 60. I got a twin brother. Where's our guy that had over there? Okay, sorry. And it's rough. Ooh. Wow, twins are, I think I put my mother in the nut house. She twins, we were just duking it out all the time, daughters might be easier, I don't know, but boy, my twin brother and I, we wrote the book together. Ginny, you'll read the stories. He's the mayor of our hometown now, though, so he's a little better behaved than he was early on. But I run just to irritate him because he gets injured all the time. He was a world-class marathoner and I wasn't. I'm pretty slow, so I run just to irritate the guy. But I haven't run for 10 years, so I'm just doing it to do one at 70. I walk every day. So what's really important is to just get out there and do whatever you do, whether it's play golf, when When Joe and I golf, we walk, you know, and, when you get out there, one of the best blessings in the world is have a dog, man. If I didn't have that dog staring at me, and my dog's staring at me, if I don't walk that thing would drive me crazy, you know? I don't care if you walk, bike, whatever you do, but just stay active. I mean, my dad used to call the television the boob tube, and he was right. I mean, sitting in front of that television set is one of the biggest risk factors for heart disease, stroke, and cancer. And that's the other thing that I would tell you is that people say, when I'd say, well, you know, you're at risk for having a heart attack or a stroke or whatever. People say, again, you know, you got to die of something. The same risk factors for heart disease are exactly the risk for cancer. Right? So what are the risk factors for cancer? What are the biggest risk factors for cancer? Well, tobacco, sedentary lifestyle. So the number one risk factor for breast cancer is a sedentary lifestyle, as well as genetics. Those are the two biggest risk factors for breast cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, poor nutrition, high fat diets. So breast cancer is highly related to high fat diets. Same risk factors for heart disease. So tobacco, it's the same. If you want to reduce your risk of cancer, move. Keep moving. So exercise markedly reduces the risk of every form of cancer that you can mention. But it's not different. So if you want to maintain overall good health, I mean, you know, they used to say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. That's pretty true. You know, healthy eating, fruit, vegetables, Mediterranean diet, you know, these healthy diets high in fruits and vegetables, low in sodium, low in poor fats and all that kind of thing. But the other thing is, if you want to keep the doctor away, move. Just keep moving. And it does not have to be high intensity activity. That's been shown a million times. It's taken me 40 years to convince my wife that all it takes is walking, you know. She keeps thinking you have to get your heart rate up. You have to get your heart rate up. I've said a million times, you know, I was responsible for UW Health building that health promotion facility on the west side and the American Family Center on the east side, you know, because I really felt the hospital needed to emphasize health promotion. So I worked with the administration to build these facilities that promoted that. And if I had one wish of all these facilities, you know, Princeton Club and all that thing, I would take every heart rate monitor out of all those facilities. You know, everybody thinks I got to get my heart rate up. That's false. You know, if you want to improve your mile time and compete, you know, and get a ribbon at the Monona race that you guys are doing, the people that want to get on the podium, great, check out your heart rate. If you want to stay healthy, just go walk. Doesn't matter. You know, walk 9 holes. You know, walk your dog. Doesn't matter. If you walk a mile in 15 minutes, or you run a mile in 7 minutes, you get the same benefit. Tell that to the dude with the running shoes on. And they're going like this. They got the Fitbit. And I've told them that, and I would drive them insane when I tell them. And I'll say it again, you know, if you run 3 miles in 21 minutes,
That's
or you
really
walk
fast.
3, yeah.
That's
right?
what you run?
No, I used to. When I was
Like, holy
30.
crap.
No, I don't. But I'm saying, if somebody would run competitively, if you run three miles in 30 minutes, or you walk 3 miles in an hour, you get the same benefit.
Why is that?
The reason is you take this body weight through gravity and you move it, because you're going to burn the calories. You're going to burn the same number of calories. So if you calculate it, you burn the exact same number of calories. And people, you know, go, wait a minute, that doesn't, I want to do that figure, but you can do it a million different ways. If you take this body weight from here to there, it doesn't matter if you do it in 30 minutes or an hour, you burn the same number of calories. That's why.
weight exercises have the same effect?
What's that?
Do weight exercises have the same effect?
That's a really good question, actually. So the question is, do weight and, that kind of, they have benefit on cardiovascular and stroke and cancer. Not quite the same, but they have benefit. So getting your heart, but it turns out if you do, having a little senior moment here, circuits. So if you do a circuit, and you keep moving, then the benefit is there. So when people try to do really high exertional stuff, it's not quite the same. So if you do deadlifts or, somebody says, okay, I just lifted, 200 pounds or something, if somebody does reps, okay, so you do 10 lifts, and then you go and you do 10 this, and then you go do 10 this, and then you go do, and you do these cycles, these circuits, right? And you do 8 exercises, and then you start over and you do 8 exercises. You do the circuits, yes. The same benefit. Because at the end of it, your heart rate is increased and you've burned these calories. So it's actually getting your body and your muscles to burn these calories. It's movement.
Hey, you talk exercise, of course, everyone knows is
Right.
beneficial. You mentioned statins. Maybe we
Yeah.
all should be on statins.
It's a really interesting question. So I wrote a lot of guidelines about these, and the answer to that is no. But if you hit certain levels, so the answer is if your 10-year risk of a cardiovascular event is greater than 10%, then the answer is yes, that you should be on these natural compounds. So there was this Japanese researcher who was studying yeast to try to find another antibiotic. Because, penicillin came from yeast. Most of our antibiotics came from different types of yeasts. So he was in this lab and he was trying to look for another antibiotic, and he kept finding this yeast that was lowering cholesterol in these cells, And he went up to his superiors and he said, I got this yeast that's lowering cholesterol. And they said, you're supposed to be studying antibiotics. Go back to your lab. And he said, well, I think this is really important. It's lowering cholesterol. And I said, go back to your lab. This is the truth. And so he kind of circumvented the middle management. He went up to the top and said, I think this is really important. I looked at this like 6 times over, and I've got 3 of these yeast compounds that are lowering cholesterol. And the guy went, ding, 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 ding. That made Merck $35 billion. Okay. And you know how much he made? They didn't give the guy a bonus. So I was at this meeting in Chicago, and I was getting an award for doing this education of physicians, on this certain project, and I was really proud. I was going to get this little plaque, and thing. And like my wife was sitting there with me, and then they said, and our gold medal award for this thing, it's for this doctor, and I was like, woo, I slid my plaque under my chair. Because if you think about Mother Teresa, and her work for all the unbelievable things, she saved several thousand lives with her work with her poor and everything. This guy has saved over 2 billion people on the planet with that discovery. Okay. Welcome person.
When was this done, and you know what his name is?
Yeah. So I'm gonna draw a blank right now on his name. Sorry, but the work was done in the early 70s. And the first statin hit the market in 1986. And we did our first study with a scientist at University of Southern California. We did one of the 2 trials. His name was David Blankenhorn, and we looked at the big arteries in the leg, the femoral arteries, to see if you lower the cholesterol low enough, what would happen to the blockage, and they shrunk in half. And about 10% of people get muscle aches with these things. And there's really no other significant side effects. People worry about their livers. They're really one of the safest medications you could possibly get. And there's all kinds of mythology out there on the internet. They're incredible. I'm on one. Because after you hit a certain age, your risk of heart disease gets greater than 10%.
What's the age? What's the age?
And when there's a calculator that you can do. So the sites that I recommend for you to, if you have questions about blood pressure, about cholesterol, about diabetes, about weight, about activity, I recommend you go to the American Heart Association site. So there's sites, rather than just Google something, go to good sites. And the site that I recommend is American Heart Association. It's heart.org. It's a nonprofit. And it's really good information. And you can Google this, you can put your numbers in. So you can say, my blood pressure is 135/85, and my age is this, and I'm, male or female. And then you just put your numbers in. It says, my 10-year risk is X. So we developed this calculator, this risk calculator for people, so they could decide if they need to go see their doctor and whether they should take a medicine or not. And we developed that thing about 20 years ago, and then we've been refining the calculator based on how the population's health is doing. And then it also determines if you're a candidate for blood pressure treatment or not. Because at a younger age, your risk is much lower, But as we all get older, our risk for heart disease and stroke increases. And so if you have the same number at a younger age, you're not a candidate. But as you get older, it's like, uh-oh. So I went to my doctor, and my numbers hadn't changed. My cholesterol was the same, my blood pressure was the same, and my doctor said, well, I think you should go on a statin. And I said, well, geez, I'm exercising and my cholesterol's this. And he said, yeah, but your 10-year risk for heart disease is 10.5%. And I said, yeah, but I eat really well and I take care of myself. And he said, you wrote the guideline. Busted. Yeah.
Could you say something about the changes in blood pressure standards?
Yes,
Related
you
to
would ask that question. So this is really an important question. So what we realized as we looked at, I was on the guideline where we did this, and what we realized is we looked at the blood pressure numbers were, as you get older, you're at greater risk again, of course, right? So here's what was confusing about the blood pressure numbers. Normal blood pressure is less than 130/80. That's where you're really at low risk. Okay. Between 130/80 and 140/90, we recommend, we'd say that's high blood pressure. 130/80 to 140/90. And we recommend at that point that people do lifestyle changes. They try to lose 5 pounds to 10 pounds, because blood pressure is exquisitely sensitive to weight. If somebody would lose 10 pounds, their blood pressure will really. If somebody really cuts out sodium in their diet by just doing 2 things, taking the salt shaker off the table, or just cutting out processed foods, that just will drop blood pressure tremendously. So in between 130/80 and 140/90, we recommend people get moving, lose 5 to 10 pounds, and usually that'll do it, and get rid of sodium, right? And try to increase their fruits and vegetables, 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. It's like 5 to 7 servings, but that could be just, 2 pieces of fruit and a salad, that's all. And those 3 things, boy, blood pressure will change. When blood pressure gets over 140/90, that's medicine time. Okay? So that's what we did with blood pressure. So people got confused about, we said, wow, 130/80 is high. That we didn't say you go on medicine. We said lifestyle until it's 140/90. 140/90 medicine.
That's age independent.
Well, we are more aggressive as people get older, because again, you're at greater risk. So now what they've done in the blood pressure guidelines is put the same calculator in. So when your 10-year risk of heart disease is higher, we get a little more aggressive. We might put medicine in there at 135/85, depending on your risk. Because your risk of stroke is higher and your risk of heart disease is higher based on age.
I have more questions, but I don't want to take up.
Yes, I attended your first appearance here. For those of you who may not know, could you take 3 minutes
Sure,
and share with us the things you did as a teenager?
sure. I'll take 1 minute. I was the first bat boy for the Milwaukee Brewers. I worked with the Milwaukee Bucks when they first started, and I became their first equipment manager, assistant trainer, and I worked for the Green Bay Packers when I was a kid. And then I worked for them for 7 years, and I sat on, should have brought it with me, but I sat on the bench for the Milwaukee Bucks' first NBA championship in 1971. Yeah.
Effective alcohol.
Yes,
Effective
yeah,
alcohol,
Yeah.
we live in Wisconsin.
Yes.
So everyone's got a definition of what's moderate. versus high.
yeah.
What's that in relation to her?
Really good question. So, it depends. So if you're otherwise completely healthy, you know, all things in, my dad used to say, all things in moderation, you know, so that's biblical. You know, it's in there somewhere. I can't quote you which chapter and verse, but it's in there somewhere.
Moses always had a couple of glasses of wine.
Yeah, exactly. I think, actually, Jesus's first miracle, it was in Canaan and turning water into wine. His mother told him. If I remember, is that right?
Right.
Yeah. And if your mother tells you to do it, you better do it. And who said that? Somebody said that. So, actually, what we recommend, from a cardiovascular point of view is 1 drink a day, and that's, 3 to 4 ounces of wine. So we'd say, people say, oh, well, wine is good for you, so they drink the whole bottle. And that's 1.5 ounces of hard alcohol. So that's a shot. So that's 1 drink. You know? So they say, oh, do you want a short or a tall? Go. Short. I'm not picking on the guy. There you are. Yeah. Yeah, but the reason for this is that I just read a study this morning. Alcohol is not heart preventative. You know, there's been some studies say it might be heart disease preventative and red wine. It's actually, it raises blood pressure. Right? Oh, it raises blood pressure.
Statins for cholesterol, right?
Right.
Once they're prescribed, are you always on it or
No, things can change. So that's one of the things that I used to try to teach doctors and they're not good at it. So they'll say, you know, I'm going to give you this blood pressure medicine. You're going to be on it the rest of your life. That is baloney sausage. And the reason, or I'm going to put you on this statin and you're going to be on it the rest of your life. That's baloney sausage. Things can change, right? You can, your weight can change. You can eat differently. You can get a different medical problem, you know, I might put you on something different because of something else. So if a doctor ever tells you that, it's baloney, because we all change, you know. So I'm going to put you on this medicine now, and if you turn around and lose 20 pounds, I can take it away. So that's a different ballgame, you know. I'll tell you that I was working really hard and I wasn't taking care of myself very well. And I got a Springer Spaniel against my wife's better judgment. And that thing was a lunatic. And I had to walk that thing. I mean, it was nuts. And I had to walk this puppy 6 miles a day. So I would walk it 3 miles in the morning, 3 miles a night. Otherwise, my wife was gonna be an ex. And I lost 46 pounds and I got off my blood pressure. So I wasn't. I lost 26 pounds with a red dog. I mean, you walk 6 miles a day, you know, I mean, I was like, I wasn't walking the dog, the dog was walking me. I'm telling you. Yeah, exactly.
I'll be 80 on Friday. I've been.
You look 60.
I've been on statins for about 35 years.
Yeah.
I'm way overweight. If I get a dog and walk 3 miles a day, and I lose 40 pounds?
Probably.
Then just
Think so?
have to-
Sure. Get some advice on lifting weights from.
with a personal, gets go to one of the health promotions. No, seriously, walking is the best physical activity you can do. Get a good pair of walking shoes. You'd be shocked. I went from 226 to 190. I'll lend you my Slayer Spaniel. I'd be happy to do it.
Cats, my wife's cats don't like you.
I just did walking is so spot on. 4 years ago, I got it. It was mostly, I never had anything like it before, but my goal is 10,000 steps a day. And I never ever, previous to having this thing on my, I never really thought about it. And I didn't realize how sedentary my lifestyle had become. And I'm not a picture of health or anything like that, but I crossed over 10,000 steps just walking in here. Because I had to walk about 3 miles this morning. When we walk 18, I'm usually crossing that 10,000 step threshold around 12.
Yeah.
So I get
Can't
about
watch TV.
14, 15,000.
That's a line.
It's amazing. I went golfing in Ireland, my wife wanted to go paint something and I was like, do you mind if I just go over to this course over here? John, go ahead. There's not a golf court in Ireland, golf cart in Ireland. And the guy yelled at me. I said, you guys don't have any golf carts? And the guy goes, it's a walking game. Just a walk. Just a walk. In America, we don't understand it. It's normal to walk. But from here to there, they don't drive around in like other countries, So other like medical questions about the heart or? Oh, I'm past my time. So, last question.
One more.
Yeah.
Real quick. I've heard all kinds of stuff about stents, usually
Yeah.
negative. So I'm always surprised when I hear someone's getting a stent. I heard they don't work. Do they? Or tell me?
Well, sometimes they're critically important. Sometimes they're not necessary. So most often, we can treat the problem medically if we catch it early enough. But when it becomes critical, when somebody's having unstable pain, in other words, they're having pain at rest or pain with minimal activity, then it's necessary. So thank you very much for your.
All right.
Yeah, let's take that.
Did you behind back? You learned that from Kareem, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or Oscar, one of the two?
Yeah. Mostly.
All right, yeah, Oscar, yeah. For all of our speakers, we make a contribution to Rotary International's End Polio Plus Fund, and Pat, we're gonna do that for you. Next week, we will have Dana Pelabon from the Rape Crisis Center to share some exciting programs on their 50th anniversary. So remember to vote tomorrow, everybody, April 4th. Thank you for being present in person and in Zoom. And remember, service above self. Have a great Rotary weekend.